Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Hope everyone had a wonderful, wonderful week. It is Erev Shabbos, Parshas Shlach. And I wanted to focus on the last few psukim of the parsha. And this is, of course, the parsha of Tzitzis. Now we have the whole story of the Meraglim. And then appended to the story of the Meraglim is the parsha of Tzitzis. So one just nice vort I want to share with you. And then perhaps a broader concept that pertains to the mitzvah of Tzitzis. So the Torah tells us, "Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amartu alehem v'asu lahem tzitzis al kanfei bigdehem ledorosam v'nosnu al tzitzis hakanof psil tchelas." So we're told that we're supposed to make for ourselves tzitzis al kanfei bigdehem ledorosam. They're on the corner of our garment ledorosam for all the generations. So I heard from my Rebbe, Rav Yonason Sachs, in the name of the Beis Yosef a number of times that there's an allusion in the psukim, very subtle. There's an allusion in the psukim, and everything is found in the Torah, that there'll be a period of time in Jewish history, perhaps a lengthy period of time, where tcheles is going to be lost. And it's already in the psukim that we're going to lose tcheles. And it's all embedded in the Torah. Where do we find this? So take a look. We're told, make for yourself tzitzis, v'asu lahem tzitzis, al kanfei bigdehem lidorosam. And those tzitzis that you put on the corner of your garment shall be lidorosam for all the generations. And then v'nasnu al tzitzis hakanaf psil tcheles. And on those tzitzis you shall put a psil tcheles, a string of tcheles. So notice, the first time the Torah used the word tzitzis, there's no tcheles mentioned. It's only mentioned v'nasnu al tzitzis hakanav psil tcheles. So when the Torah refers to the concept, the term tzitzis, that's a reference to the lavan. And then it says, on those strings of lavan, on the tzitzis, you shall put a psil tcheles. Now notice that word lidorosam. Lidorosam is in the first part of the pasuk. It is qualifying that term tzitzis. Tzitzis are lidorosam. And then you shall place on your tzitzis a psil tcheles. What is that telling you? That tzitzis, the lavan, that we're going to have lidorosam. We're never going to lose the mitzvah of tzitzis. But the psil tcheles, lidorosam, is not applying to psil tcheles. In other words, alluded to in the pasuk is that there will be a point in Jewish history, in our history, where we're not going to have tcheles, and that's already embedded in the pasuk itself. That's a very interesting diuk that is made by the Beis Yosef. The Gemara Maseches Menachos on Daf Mem Gimel Mem Beis tells us, based on the pasuk Ureisim oso uschartem, you look at the tzitzis and you remember other mitzvos. Tzitzis is shkula, keneged taryag mitzvos, keneged kol ha-mitzvos. How is it that we see the tzitzis, and that's why the Itur writes that we wear the tzitzis out, so we see the tzitzis or ismoso uzechartem, and you remember kol mitzvahs Hashem. How does that work? Is it just stam, or is there some kind of association? So the Gemara suggests a few ideas how you get from one to the other. So on the one hand, the Gemara tells us, this is towards the end of the Gemara there on Daf Mem Gimel Mem Beis, that tzitzis is inspiring. How so? Because you have this string of tcheles. And why is tcheles different? Manishtana tcheles mikol minei tzivonim. How is tcheles different from all other colors? Bipnei shat tcheles dome liyam. You look at tcheles and it reminds you, it makes you think of the tremendous oceans of the world. And v'yam dome l'rakia. You go from yam, the vast oceans, to the heavens, to the rakia, and then from the rakia, right there to the kisei hakavod. And that's the association you're supposed to make. And that's one Gemara. The Gemara earlier on the very same Amud writes, U're'ismo so zchartem, re'ei mitzvah zu, you'll look at this mitzvah, u'zechartem, and you'll remember mitzvah acheres hatuyabo. And you remember other mitzvahs. How so? So again, a few lines in the Gemara. The Gemara tells, number one, me'emasai kornet shma b'shachris. When is the earliest time you can say Kriyat Shema in the morning? Mishi yakir bein tcheles lelavan. When you can distinguish the colors, the pigments of tcheles and lavan, that's when you can say shachris. So what's going to happen? You're wearing your tzitzis, you see tcheles, you see lavan. In your mind, you're going to play this association, what we'll call the game of mitzvah association. And now you jump, you're wearing tzitzis, that has tcheles, that reminds me of mitzvahs kriyat shema, because the earliest time I can say kriyat shema is mishiyaker bein tcheles lava. And then another brisa, v'tanya idach uriisem oso uzachartem. How do you connect the re'iyah to the zechira? Re'ei mitzvah zu uzachor mitzvah acheres hasmuchala. See this mitzvah and you'll be reminded of another mitzvah that is adjacent to it, that is next to it. What is that other mitzvah? Zu mitzvahs kilayim. There's an association between tzitzis and kilayim. How so? So again, it's a smichus aparshios, because the Torah tells us, lo tilbash shatnez, do not wear shatnez, tzemro pishtim yachdav, rather gedilim ta'asalacha, make for yourself tzitzis. So you have a smichus aparshios between tzitzis and kilayim, so you wear tzitzis, it reminds you of mitzvahs kilayim. What these Gemaras are telling us, I think, is a very, very important idea. And that is, how is it that tzitzis is shkula connected to kol mitzvahs? Yeah, there's a nice gematria of tzitzis equals what? 600, 8 strings, 5 knots, 613. But more than that. On the one hand, how do people get inspired? How is tzitzis going to now bring us to do other mitzvahs? So I think the Gemara is giving us 3 separate and distinct avenues, and they're all phenomenally significant. One is to say, look at the tchelas. Look at the tchelas, and what do you think about? You see that rich hue of aqua. You think about the vast oceans. And when you make that jump, you think, wow, the Ribono Shel Olam as the Borei Olam. So unbelievable, so inspiring, so dramatic. And then that takes you up, because after all, the pigment of the ocean always reflects the heavens, the skies. And that takes you up to the heavens, which brings you to that state of inspiration of Kisei HaKavod. And a simple string of tchelas, when you reflect upon it, it's supposed to uplift. It's supposed to elevate. It's supposed to inspire. Hashem as the Borei Olam. What can be more inspiring than that? And that's what that little string can do if you look at it through the proper lens. And that's what I will call the inspiration of Maisa Bereshis, which tcheles, which tzitzis can bring you to. But then the Gemara tells us other, if you will, associations. There's an association which I'll call in the halachic sphere. Mitzvah goreres mitzvah. You see tcheles, you see lavan, and you start thinking with your halachic mind. You think as a halachist, and you say, oh, so now tcheles, lavan, kriyat shema. And if a person is steeped in a halachic framework, a halachic mindset, so his mind naturally will jump from mitzvah to mitzvah to mitzvah, because everything is interconnected. Everything is an association. And one mitzvah brings you to another mitzvah. That's on what I would call the experiential mitzvah level. And a person who's steeped, who is a halachic man, so yes, he will definitely behaviorally jump mitzvah goreres mitzvah. One mitzvah intellectually bridges him to the next mitzvah, to the next mitzvah, to the next mitzvah. And then there's another level, and that is what I will call the Talmud Torah level. The Gemara tells us, sit and learn, and when you learn, you'll see smichos haparshios. You'll learn the parsha of tzitzis, and which is adjacent to the parsha of kilayim, and of course then you're going to make interconnections, limudim, and one is going to bring you to the other, and one is going to, in terms of not Maisa Bereshis, but perhaps Matan Torah, through the process of Limud Torah, bring you one mitzvah to the next mitzvah to the next mitzvah. So the Gemara here in Menachos Daf Mem Gimel Beis is giving us 3 separate and distinct paradigms of how tzitzis can inspire us to do many more mitzvahs. And I think it's not just tzitzis. Tzitzis is now the paradigm for any process, any mitzvah. Of course, you have to wear the right lens. You have to be wearing the right glasses. But level number 1 is you see certain mitzvahs will inspire you to the greatness of Hashem as the Borei Olam, as the magnificent world that He created for us. And that's the Tcheles Dom Leyam Shedom Lerakia. And that brings us to Kisei HaKavod. And then there is the inspiration that you get from being a halachic man. Mitzvah after mitzvah, Tcheles, Mishiyakir, Kriyat Shema. Kriyat Shema starts me to think, tefillah. And tefillah is going to start to make me think of avos. And that's going to start making me thinking of perhaps chesed, hachnasas orachim, karbanos. One thing leads to another in terms of that halachic man. And then there is, we'll use the term halachic mind. And the halachic mind will go ahead and, in his limud haTorah, one mitzvah to another, a gzeira shava, a hekesh, and one thing leads to another and brings a person to do another mitzvah and another mitzvah and another mitzvah. So this is all found in this very simple agadic Gemara in Maseches Menachos, from the simple mitzvah of tzitzis, how one can, through these three separate and complementary vehicles, go ahead and bring himself to do more and more mitzvahs. How the man of faith can look at the heavens and be inspired. How the halachic man can look at his behavioral mitzvah after mitzvah and be inspired. And how the halachic mind can go ahead and through his limud be inspired. Again, one mitzvah after another mitzvah, we should all be zocheh to live tremendously inspired lives.